rain started just after midnight. Not normal rain, the kind that erases the road in front of you, the kind that makes every mile feel wrong. I remember the sound first, the windshield wipers dragging back and forth slowly, struggling against the water. The highway was empty, no headlights, no houses, nothing except trees and fog. And then I saw him, standing on the shoulder of the road, completely still. No umbrella, no bag, no movement, just watching the highway through the rain. I should have kept driving. I know that now. But that night I pulled over, and exactly 1 hour later, I saw the same man standing outside my house. Silence, not walking, not knocking, just standing there, waiting. At first, I thought he was just another stranded traveler, a guy caught in the storm. Maybe his car broke down somewhere up the road. That's what I told myself when I unlocked the passenger door. But the moment he stepped inside, something changed. The truck suddenly felt smaller, quieter. Even the rain sounded farther away. He didn't say thank you, didn't ask where we were going. He just sat there, dripping water onto the floor mat, staring straight ahead into the darkness beyond the windshield. And there was one thing about him, one small detail I didn't notice until much later. A detail that still keeps me awake whenever it rains. Because when I finally understood what happened on that highway that night, I never drove that road again. Brief static burst from the radio. The question is, what was wrong with the stranger? It was late October. One of those nights where the rain feels endless. Not heavy all at once, just constant. Cold water hammering the windshield for hours without stopping. I was doing overnight deliveries back then. Small freight runs between towns most people have never heard of. The pay was decent. The roads weren't. That night, I drove for almost 6 hours straight. My dashboard clock read 2:13 a.m. My phone signal kept cutting in and out every few miles, sometimes disappearing completely. The highway stretched for miles through nothing but forest. No houses, no streetlights, no other cars. Just rain and those old warning signs flashing through the dark every few minutes. Road flooding possible. Next gas station 47 miles. I remember stopping once near an empty gas station just to stay awake. The place looked abandoned. Lights flickering behind dusty windows. A broken soda machine outside buzzing in the rain. I didn't stay long. Something about that road already felt off. Not dangerous exactly, just wrong. Like I wasn't supposed to be there that late. So I got back in the truck and kept driving. The rain got worse the farther north I went. Hard enough that the wipers could barely keep up. Most of the time, I could only see a few feet ahead of me. And then, I saw him, standing completely still beside the road. At first, I thought it was a broken signpost. That's how still he was. The headlights hit him for only a second before the rain swallowed everything again. I slowed down, and there he was. A man in a long black coat standing on the shoulder of the highway. Most people wave for help. Most people stepped toward the road. He didn't. He just stood there, staring at my truck through the rain. His face was hard to make out beneath the hood, but I could tell he wasn't moving. Not even a little. The wind was strong enough to shake the trees around him, but his coat barely moved. I remember tightening my grip on the steering wheel. Something about him felt wrong, but I was exhausted. My head hurts. And honestly, I felt bad leaving him there alone in that storm. So I pulled over. The moment the truck stopped, he walked to the passenger side door. Slowly, not rushed, not relieved, just calm. I leaned over and unlocked the door. The man climbed inside without saying a word, and the second he shut the door, the inside of the truck went completely quiet. Not silent, just quieter than it should have been, like the rain outside had suddenly moved farther away. The smell hit me next. Wet soil, old wood, something stale underneath it. I tried not to stare at him. Up close, he looked older than I first thought. Pale skin, thin hands, water dripping from the edge of his sleeves. But the strange part was, his coat should have been soaked. Yet somehow it looked almost dry. I forced a laugh and asked, "Car trouble?" The man kept staring through the windshield. Then, very softly, he said, "You shouldn't stop on this road after midnight.
People are strange, especially out on roads like that. But little things started bothering me.
The way he barely blinked. The way his chest never seemed to rise when he breathed. And every now and then, he'd quietly mention things he shouldn't know. He asked if my mother was still sick. He asked if I still had the dog I grew up with. Then he mentioned the street I lived on. Not just the town, the street. I stopped answering him after that. I just kept driving, hands tight on the wheel, trying not to look at him anymore. That's when the radio turned on by itself. Static bursts. I jumped and reached for the dial immediately. The screen flickered. Static filled the cab, and buried underneath it, I heard a voice, very faint, almost swallowed by the noise. "Don't let him in." Immediate silence. The radio shut off. Just like that. My heart was pounding now. I told myself the signal was crossing frequencies. Late night interference. Nothing else. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside the truck was wrong. So I looked up at the rearview mirror, and my chest nearly stopped. The passenger seat was empty. I could still hear him sitting beside me. I could smell the damp earth coming from his coat, but in the reflection, there was nobody there. I froze. Then slowly, I turned my head toward the passenger seat. He was still beside me, sitting perfectly still, smiling. Not a normal smile either. Too wide, too still, like he'd been waiting for me to notice. I looked back at the mirror again. This time he appeared in it, still smiling. Lightning flashed across the windshield for a split second, and that's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. His clothes weren't wet anymore. By that point, I just wanted to get away from him. I didn't care how ridiculous that sounded. I needed to stop somewhere. Anywhere with lights. Other people. A few miles later, I saw an old roadside diner through the rain. The sign outside flickered weakly in the storm. Half the letters were burned out, but it was open. I pulled into the parking lot, so fast the tires slid across the wet pavement. The stranger still hadn't moved, still staring forward. I killed the engine and forced myself to speak calmly. "I'm getting coffee," I told him. "You want anything?" No response, just that same empty stare through the windshield. For a second, I thought maybe he hadn't even heard me. So I stepped out into the rain and hurried toward the diner. The bell above the door rang when I entered. Warm air hit my face immediately. Coffee, grease, old wood floors. There were only two people inside. A trucker asleep in a booth near the back, and an older waitress wiping down the counter. She smiled at me at first. Then she looked past my shoulder toward the parking lot, and the smile vanished. The woman behind the counter dropped her coffee, mugged the moment she saw him. The sound shattered through the diner. Coffee spilled across the floor. For a second, she just stood there staring through the rain-streaked window, completely frozen. Then she hurried toward me. Fast. "Who's outside with you?" she whispered. I glanced back toward the truck. The stranger was still sitting in the passenger seat. "I picked him up a few miles back," I said quietly. "Why?" The waitress looked pale now, terrified. "You need to leave," she whispered. "Right now." I remember laughing nervously. I thought maybe she knew him. Maybe he was dangerous. But then she said something that made my stomach drop. There was a man killed on this highway about 20 years ago. She kept her voice low, like she was afraid someone else might hear. Stormy night, picked up by a driver just after midnight. The rain hammered against the windows harder now. The old woman stared directly at the truck. They found his body in the woods 3 days later. I felt cold all over. I asked her what the man looked like, and before she could answer, lightning flash. I looked toward the diner window. The stranger was standing outside, completely still, watching me through the glass, water running down the hood of his coat, and smiling. My chest tightened instantly, because he was supposed to still be sitting in my truck. I stumbled backward away from the window, so fast I nearly slipped on the diner floor. When I looked outside again, he was gone. The waitress grabbed my arm immediately. "You need to leave this place," she whispered. Now, I asked her what that thing outside was, but she wouldn't answer anymore. She just kept staring toward the parking lot with this terrified look on her face, like she'd seen something she never wanted to see again. The trucker sleeping in the booth hadn't moved once. Not during the thunder, not during the mug breaking. Nothing. That somehow scared me even more. I stepped back outside into the storm. The rain had weakened now. Not gone, just quieter. The parking lot was empty except for my truck sitting beneath a flickering streetlight. The passenger door was hanging open, slowly moving back and forth in the wind. I stopped walking. For a second, I genuinely considered leaving the truck there and running, but my phone had no signal. The diner was miles from the nearest town, so I forced myself forward. Water splashed beneath my boots as I crossed the parking lot, and that smell hit me again. Stronger now. Rotten, like soaked dirt pulled from a grave. I reached the truck and looked inside. The passenger seat was empty, but the inside of the cab smelled rotten, like wet earth. I could hear my own breathing now. Fast, shaking. Then, thunk. A loud knock came from the truck bed behind me. I froze instantly. Another knock. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Thunk. The rain softened around me. Everything else disappeared. No thunder, no wind, just that sound coming from the back of the truck. I remember staring at the side mirror, trying to see into the darkness behind me. Nothing. Then another knock. Closer this time somehow. I told myself not to look, but I did. Slowly, I walked toward the rear of the truck. Every step felt heavier than the last. The flickering streetlight buzzed overhead. On, off, on again. I reached for the back handle with trembling hands and pulled the truck bed open. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The stranger was crouched inside, folded into the corner in a way no person should have been able to fit. His arms bent too tightly against his body, his head tilted unnaturally sideways, and he was smiling, wider than before, far too wide. His eyes were completely black. No whites, no pupils, just black. Rainwater dripped from the edge of the truck bed onto his face, but he never blinked. For one horrible second, we just stared at each other. Then he moved. I ran immediately. I didn't think. I didn't scream. I just turned and sprinted across the parking lot into the woods behind the diner. Branches tore at my jacket as I pushed through the trees. Mud swallowed my boots. Rain crashed through the leaves overhead. I could barely breathe. My flashlight bounced wildly in my shaking hand, flickering between the trees. Every shadow looked like him. Every sound behind me felt closer. Then suddenly, complete silence for 2 seconds. No rain, no wind, nothing. And then, footsteps behind me. I don't remember how long I ran through those woods. Minutes felt like hours. At some point, I stopped hearing the footsteps, but I never stopped feeling them behind me. I eventually made it back to the highway just before sunrise. The diner was gone, or at least, I couldn't find it again. No lights, no parking lot, no sign, just trees. The police later told me there hadn't been a diner on that stretch of road for nearly 11 years. I didn't argue with them. I barely spoke at all after that night. For 3 straight days, I stayed inside my apartment trying to convince myself exhaustion had caused all of it. The man, the waitress, the truck bed, all of it. Then I got a phone call from my mother, and everything changed. Her voice sounded nervous the moment I answered. She asked me why I'd suddenly been asking questions about my father. I told her I hadn't. There was a long silence after that. Then she said something I'll never forget. "David, there's something your father never told you about that road." That same afternoon, I went through old records at the county library, police reports, newspaper archives, faded photographs sealed inside cracked plastic folders, and eventually, I found him. The stranger. Same black coat, same hollow stare. The article was dated October 18th, 2006. According to the report, a man had been struck by a truck during a storm on Black Ridge Highway just after midnight. The driver never stopped. The victim disappeared into the woods before police arrived. His body was found 3 days later, buried beneath leaves and mud less than a mile from the road. Then I saw the driver's name listed in the report. My father. 3 days later, I found out why the stranger knew my name. My father had hit a man on that same road 20 years earlier and drove away. Suddenly everything made sense. The questions, the smile, the way he looked at me like he already knew who I was. The stranger wasn't random. He had been waiting, but it still doesn't explain what happened next. I moved to another city a few weeks after that night. Different apartments, different jobs, different roads. I stopped driving on highways after dark completely, and for a while, I convinced myself it was over. Months passed. The nightmares became less frequent. The rain stopped bothering me as much. Life slowly started feeling normal again, until last November, another storm. I remember lying awake in bed listening to rain hit the bedroom window when my phone suddenly lit up on the nightstand. Security camera detected movement outside. At first, I ignored it. Probably a stray animal. Maybe someone walking past the building. But something about it made my chest tighten instantly. The same feeling I had sitting in that truck. So I grabbed my phone and opened the camera feed. The footage was blurry from the rain. Streetlights flickering outside the apartment complex. Water running down the lens. And standing near the edge of the parking lot was a man in a black coat. Motionless. Facing directly toward my apartment window. Even through the grainy camera footage, I recognized him immediately. He wasn't moving, wasn't blinking, just standing there in the rain, watching. Then the camera suddenly glitched. Static filled the screen for half a second, and when the image returned, he was closer, much closer, standing directly beneath my window now. I couldn't see his eyes clearly through the storm, but I could see the smile, and before the camera feed was cut out completely, I heard 3 soft knocks on my bedroom door. Knock, knock, knock. He was closer this time.